I at some point suggested that Israel would completely occupy the whole part of northern Gaza, take over the whole territory of northern Gaza, uh, evacuate all the population from there. At that point, there were about 300,000 people in that area, and would eventually trade back this area in exchange for the hostages. So that the Hamas would be facing a dilemma of losing the major geographical area of the Gaza Strip and being squeezed into the southern part of the Strip, or returning the hostages.
What should Israel do now?
It's a very, very tough question. Very, very tough question, because it's going to be very, very hard for Israel to again go back to conducting a war after we have allowed most of the Gazans, internally displaced people, to go back into northern Gaza. The northern Gaza is the most important part for Hamas because it was the capital of Gaza. It's the main economic area where the main population lives. It's closer to Israel. It's very easy from there to attack Israeli railway line, and the adjacent larger communities in Israel are adjacent to the northern Gaza part, where on the south there is almost only very, I would say, sparse agricultural communities. So we are now facing in a tough situation, and I think that the only way to win this is uh, start again with northern Gaza. First thing I would do would be to close off all the crossing where we provide aid to northern Gaza. I think this is the fact that we are voluntarily providing aid to a territory where we are being attacked from is completely insane. On the other hand, Gazans should, be able to receive food or anything they need, but we should facilitate this only on southern Gaza, only from Egypt, not via Israel. And I think this would place us in a much better position that we are now.
And
It may take a long time. It's not going to be something that will bear fruits within a week or two. And for the hostages, every second is needed, unfortunately.
so, do you want to go forward with phase two? Try to get out as many remaining. I agree. Let's that they're gonna lie. They'll keep a hostage, but try to. I think it's pretty compelling. The argument is let's just try to get as many living hostages back as we can, and then we'll quote unquote end the war, and then we can whatever go back in.
Look,
What do you
look,
think?
Hamas have now. We don't know exactly how many are alive. Maybe 22 hostages are still alive. There were different numbers between 19 and 24, but most likely the right number is 22. I don't see Hamas giving all of them almost under any condition. Now, could there be some kind of a pressure over the next week or 2 weeks and we get 4 more or 8 more? I would try to get as many live people as we can. I don't think Israel should do anything to receive dead bodies. That's a big mistake. But to get as many live hostages out of Gaza as we can, of course.
But what
But
if the cost is they have to sign an agreement to end or fully leave the territory?
I don't see Hamas completely giving up everybody.
Right.
And I think that Israel should start conducting itself in a way that Hamas also has things to lose. Because if you're constantly just giving them aid, giving them electricity, giving them everything, time is not a factor. They don't lose any part of territory. Uh, if they stretch the negotiation over months and months. So part of my plan, which perhaps the translation didn't was not that great, was also for Israel to set a line that says this is going to be, and it's pretty much similar to what you described this mathematician proposal. Set a line that says this is the part of Gaza where we're not going to return it forever. We are going to take ownership of that piece of land, and we can move this piece of land by 50 meters every week. It doesn't need to be a whole lot, but it can be an acre a week.
Yeah.
We can do the math. It
Right,
doesn't
right, right,
really
right, right.
matter, but something that sends Hamas a very clear message. Every day that you're still holding the hostages, there is something that you lose.
Do, do you agree with me that the whole defeating Hamas goal is sort of a dumb goal? It would be like an endless task.
In many ways, yes. I wrote an article about it in 2021. Of course, now things are a little bit different. But this whole notion as if there is, this Gaza population that is completely detached from Hamas, and you can just remove Hamas, put somebody else, and suddenly everything would be great. That's a false notion. It's coming, in part from previous administration in the U.S. It was very supportive of the idea that okay, let's remove the Hamas regime. And I look at Afghanistan. The U.S. have been able to remove the Taliban regime back in 2002, I think. They
Right,
put
right.
Karzai. Karzai had this great constitution which gives freedom and equality for women. How, I think it was 2006. And now, 20 years later, the Taliban are back in power. Women cannot even speak in public in Afghanistan. We should realize
Yeah.
that we cannot control
Yep.
everything.
We wasted over $2 trillion. We could have just lit the money on fire, and it probably would have been better. So, are the two-state solution is dead? Tell me, among Israelis, obviously it's dead in the context of like the next few years. Obviously, like that's not going to happen. But in a broader time span, is it pretty much dead among the Israeli population?
It's hard to tell. I suspect that the answer is yes. Um, I think that the Middle East may have more surprises for us. I'm very concerned about what's happening in Jordan. As I said, the West Bank is really here, 10 miles from me. Short-range rockets being fired from the West Bank can land on my apartment, and I am as far from the West Bank as you can be in central Israel. I'm really
And
I'm really next to
they
the, to
have
the
the
ocean
high
here.
and they as I point out, they have the higher ground.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. They also have the higher ground. You're absolutely correct. Uh, so I think that the idea of having a Palestinian state at this situation um, I think is not going to go forward. And as I said, as far as Gaza is such an isolated territory in the corner, connected to Egypt, not very close to all of the main Israeli population center, that Gaza can be dealt with geographically in a very different way to the West Bank. The West Bank, we cannot employ the same solution that I'm suggesting to Gaza.
So what I think is going to happen, where will we be in 5 years? And I'd like to hear your take because I think it's going to be. I think Hamas, yeah, Hamas will probably still be running. Sad to say, they'll probably still be running Gaza. It'll be a nightmare. What do you think?
Um, I think that Hamas would use a ploy where they would try to convince the whole world that there is somebody else in charge. They would call it Palestinian Authority,
Right.
revamped Palestinian Authority, an Arab consortium of state, a technocrat government, professional committee, whatever.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
there would be somebody at the front that is not being labeled as Hamas.
It's
They would
A
control behind the
Lebanon,
scene.
a
They
Lebanon situation, basically.
Yes,
Yeah,
but it could be, it could be 10 different other ways. But we need to keep in mind that Hamas is very large, embedded, ingrained into the Gazan society. While not everyone is Hamas, I'm not saying that 100%
right,
Hamas,
right, right.
okay, but the ideology, even those who are politically, they would say, oh, I'm not going to vote for Hamas. They still hold the same ideology
Yeah, right, right, right.
in large part,
So the irony is that uh, actually Hamas agrees with Netanyahu. They also want to be quote unquote defeated and replaced with a. They would love to be quote unquote defeated, replaced with the say the PA, because they, yeah,
I wrote an article on 2021 where I said you cannot really get rid of Hamas, but on the other hand, Hamas doesn't want to be in charge of the Gaza sewage. That's the conundrum.
exactly. Last things, I really have a nightmare that Israel, and I predicted this in October. Remember when Israel went into Iran? They said, "Well, we got rid of all the defenses. Now they're just a sitting duck." And then I noticed, oh well, where's the follow up strike? Oh, there is none. And I predicted there's not going to be one, at least